What you see standing before you is the Great Kabuki. You have heard many things of him, and now you are going to have the chance to witness the greatest athlete known to man today. I don't care if it's Tom Boogaloo Shaft talking about tough man competitions on Boogie Street in Singapore, brother. You couldn't even walk down the street. You're talking about what you're going to do to the Great Kabuki. You will hear a lot of people tell you a lot of things, how they're going to beat this man up and how they're going to put him out of wrestling. But nobody, no one in wrestling today can look you right in the eye and say that they have a 1-2-3 over the boogeyman.
Professional wrestling has always lived in the space between sport and spectacle, but few performers understood that balance as instinctively as the Great Kabuki. Emerging in the early 1980s, at a time when territorial promotions still thrived and character work defined superstardom, Kabuki did not rely on long-winded promos or technical exhibitions to captivate audiences. Instead, he weaponized presence. With haunting face paint, ritualistic movements, and the sudden burst of his infamous green mist, he transformed a wrestling ring into a stage for myth. To American audiences, Kabuki, with his manager Gary Hart, was presented as something otherworldly, silent, mysterious, and dangerous. Yet beneath the theatrical veneer was a performer who deeply understood wrestling's oldest truth, that larger-than-life characters endure long after wins and losses fade. His influence would ripple outward, most visibly through figures like the Great Muta, but also through the broader evolution of character-driven storytelling that reshaped the industry. Born in the shadow of a nation rebuilding itself, the Great Kabuki, real name Akihisa Mera, entered the world in post-World War II Nobeoka, Japan, at a time when discipline, endurance, and honor were not abstractions, but cultural imperatives. Japan, in the aftermath of the war, emphasized resilience in defeat and dignity in struggle, ideals that found perhaps their purest athletic expression in sumo. Recognizing his physical promise, he was brought into the Hasegawa stable under the guidance of the respected sumo and wrestling figure Junzo Yoshinosato. The stable system was unforgiving, built on hierarchy, repetition, and obedience, but it forged toughness. Though Mera would not remain in sumo permanently, its influence never left him. At just 16 years old, in 1964, Mera transitioned into professional wrestling, debuting for the storied Japanese Wrestling Association, the pioneering promotion founded by the legendary Rikido Zan, the man widely regarded as the godfather of Japanese wrestling. Fittingly, Mera's first match took place on Halloween night, October 31st, 1964, an eerie bit of timing that in retrospect feels almost prophetic. During his early years in JWA, Mera wrestled under various names, including Mr. Sato, a tribute to his mentor, spending 6 formative years sharpening his craft in a system that valued discipline as much as spectacle. But Japan would not be the final proving ground. By the early 1970s, with his fundamentals hardened and his instincts sharpened, Mera looked beyond his homeland. The next chapter would take him across the Pacific, where the myth of the Great Kabuki would truly begin to take shape. When Akihisa Mera arrived in the United States in 1970, he stepped into a wrestling landscape unlike anything in Japan. America was carved into territories, each loyal to the banner of the National Wrestling Alliance, a loose confederation of regional powers where champions traveled and reputations were currency. His American ascent began in the NWA Hollywood wrestling promotion, where he competed under the name Taka Chiho. There, in 1970, he captured the promotion's version of the NWA Hollywood Heavyweight Championship, his first significant taste of American gold. Throughout the 1970s, during the height of the NWA's territorial dominance, Mera became a traveling antagonist, moving through the South, Southeast, and Southwest. He wrestled under a variety of identities: Yoshino Sato in Japan with All Japan Pro Wrestling, Hito Tojo during a successful run in Australia, where he also claimed regional NWA gold, adapting his presentation to each market while maintaining the same core identity: disciplined, methodical, and dangerous. In 1978, wrestling under the name Mr. Sato, Mera elevated his game. Championship wrestling from Florida was built on heat, slow-burning grudges, personal rivalries, and clear-cut heroes and villains, and Sato understood how to cultivate all three. That same year, he aligned with fellow countryman Mr. Saito. Together, the pair stormed the tag team ranks, blending stoic intensity with physical brutality. Through the sweltering Florida summer of 1978, they became a constant threat. Their fiercest opposition came from beloved stars like Jack Briscoe and Gerald Briscoe, as well as the fiery pairing of Steve Keirn and Mike Graham. The battles seesawed throughout 1978, championships changing hands in heated programs that kept Florida one of the NWA's hottest markets. For Mera, it was another lesson in psychology. The better the baby faces, the more valuable the villain. Mera would continue to work the territories with some success, but 1981 would mark the turning point. After more than a decade of honing his craft across continents and territories, Akihisa Mera was about to receive the gimmick that would define his career. The persona that would transform a reliable heel into an unforgettable spectacle. Just as importantly, he would soon align with one of the sharpest creative minds the wrestling business had ever produced. In 1981, Akihisa Mera arrived in Dallas, a territory blazing with momentum under the banner of world-class championship wrestling. It was there that Mera reconnected with the cerebral and theatrical mastermind Gary Hart. The two had crossed paths years earlier during Hart's time promoting in Australia, but this meeting would prove far more consequential. Hart immediately saw what others had only glimpsed. Beneath Mera's disciplined exterior was the potential for something mythical. Drawing inspiration in part from an earlier concept used by Filipino wrestler Ray Urbano, Hart crafted a new persona specifically for Mera, one that would fuse ritual, menace, and spectacle. Thus, the Great Kabuki was born. The transformation was deliberate. Mera grew his hair long. His face became a canvas of ominous paint. Most importantly, he stopped speaking. In an era when wrestlers shouted to sell tickets, Kabuki's silence became deafening. Gary Hart handled the proclamations and threats, his voice slicing through arenas while Kabuki stood motionless beside him, eyes fixed, presence unshaken. The dynamic was simple but devastatingly effective. Hart generated the heat with words. Kabuki delivered the violence. Before matches, Kabuki performed a nunchuck exhibition that blurred the line between martial arts demonstration and intimidation ritual. Then came the innovation that would define him. The sudden eruption of green mist, spat into the face of an unsuspecting opponent. The tactic was shocking, theatrical, and entirely his own. It elevated him from villain to apparition, from foreign heel to something closer to folklore. At the height of his popularity, the Great Kabuki was so in demand that Gary Hart occasionally arranged for another wrestler, Kazuharu Sonoda, known as the Magic Dragon, to portray Kabuki on nights when they were double booked in different cities. With the face paint, long hair, and silent presentation perfected, the illusion was convincing enough to protect the drawing power of the gimmick. Together, Hart and Kabuki worked through Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling and other territories, maintaining Kabuki's aura as a top-tier attraction. By the late 1980s, however, the partnership began to fracture. The breaking point came in Dallas under world-class championship wrestling, when Booker Ken Mantell proposed a match that would have Kabuki take a loss in a multi-man bout. Hart strongly objected, believing it damaged the mystique they had carefully built. Kabuki, concerned about upsetting promoter Fritz von Erich and creating political tension that might follow him back to Japan, ultimately chose to go through with the finish. Hart saw it as a failure to protect the gimmick they had created together. The disagreement marked the beginning of the end. Feeling that the aura of the Great Kabuki had been compromised, Hart cut ties, bringing one of the most successful manager-wrestler pairings of the 1980s to a close. What they had built together, spectacle, silence, mist, and myth, had defined an era. But like many great wrestling alliances, it ended not in the ring, but in a clash over how best to preserve the legend. After parting ways with the Great Kabuki, Gary Hart would go on to recreate elements of the formula with the Great Muta. When Keiji Muto debuted in Jim Crockett Promotions in 1989, Hart billed him as Kabuki's son, capitalizing on the visual similarities, face paint, theatrical presence, and most notably, the use of the green Asian mist. Though the familial connection was purely storyline fiction, the lineage of influence was very real. Kabuki had been the originator of the mist in professional wrestling, and Muta became its most globally recognized successor. As the 1990s approached, Kabuki gradually shifted away from a full-time in-ring schedule and moved into the promotional side of the business. He played a role in launching new ventures in Japan, including Super World of Sports and the International Wrestling Association of Japan, helping cultivate the next generation of talent and alternative wrestling platforms during a transitional era. Even as his in-ring career slowed, Kabuki's mystique endured. In 1994, he made a surprise appearance in the Royal Rumble, a reminder to American audiences that the silent, mist-spitting legend had never fully disappeared. By then, the Great Kabuki was no longer just a heel from the territories. He was a foundational figure whose influence could be seen in the spectacle-driven evolution of professional wrestling itself. Though the Great Kabuki officially retired in 1998, legends rarely stay gone for long. He worked a series of retirement matches at the end of that decade, but in the years that followed, he resurfaced for special appearances, including participation in the 2015 and 2016 New Japan Rumble for New Japan Pro Wrestling, where fittingly, he was disqualified both times for using the very weapon that made him infamous, the green mist. What began as a carefully protected Hart Kabuki creation soon took on a life of its own. Though many in the business respected the mist as their intellectual territory, larger promotions were less protective. World Wrestling Federation repackaged similar concepts with wrestlers like Killer Khan and later revived the visual with Kwang. Over time, the mist evolved from shocking novelty to accepted wrestling folklore. Performers across generations adopted it, from Bushi in New Japan to Asuka in WWE. The mythology deepened as different mist colors were said to produce different effects, blinding opponents, burning their eyes, or even causing paralysis, transforming a simple theatrical trick into layered wrestling lore. The Great Kabuki's legacy is not measured merely in championships or territories conquered. It lives in the spectacle he helped pioneer, in the understanding that silence can be louder than a scream, that ritual can heighten violence, and that one well-timed burst of emerald mist can turn a wrestler into myth. Alongside Gary Hart, he proved that if you protect the gimmick will protect you. And decades later, as new generations reach for that same cloud of green, professional wrestling continues to breathe in the influence of the Great Kabuki.